The other thing is we still have, after tonight, Brian, or today, we have infrastructure, intergovernmental cooperation, capital improvement, and economic development. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
What is our ETA on being able to see a red line version on those?
They are with county staff.
Yes, I have them in my hands.
Awesome, Dawson. Okay, commission. I know this is getting old, but you are doing a fabulous job. What is the possibility of our coming together for a final, hopefully, maybe I'm not going to say that word, for a workshop 2 weeks from this evening, from 6 to 9, to finish this stuff up so we can hand it back to the consultant so they can get us a red line version by the August
That's the
meeting.
22nd?
14 and 8, yes, that would be the 22nd.
Okay, it's good for Jerry.
Good for Joey.
Tom?
Yes.
Joel?
I'm good. I'm in.
Aaron?
So long as it's virtual, which it sounds like it will be, I'm in. I'm gonna be out of town, but I can join in.
I have a feeling it's going to be virtual to the 1st of August at least.
Yeah.
Ken, you may not be, right? Or may not be. Ken, we can't hear you.
Oh, I didn't hear you.
I'm sorry.
Yes, in 2 weeks, I hope to be in tip-top shape.
Kicking good. Okay, that sounds great. We'll schedule it from 6 to 9 again. We will be virtual. But hopefully we can clean up those last 4 elements, a couple of which aren't too big, and a couple of which kind of tie things together. So if we can do that, we'll get it back to Kimley Horn, and hopefully you can give us just some sort of a further red line version of what we've been doing and the changes we've made. And we'll go over those at our August meeting. We do not have any cases to hear for our August meeting. So we will be able to devote the entire meeting to that. And if we can get that a few days ahead of time to give everybody a chance to, do some healthy bedtime reading and be ready to give us any substantive changes that we need to make just to tie it together. And then we'll give it back to you that day, Mr. Teeple, and ask you to bring us something at our September meeting, which will be a month out from then.
Sounds good, ma'am.
All right. My goal and our goal is to have the red line, our final red line version, on the commissioner's desk October 1st, or in Terry Turner's hands, Chairman Terry Turner's hands by October 1st. And I'm going to ask that we schedule a time with a workshop with the county commission to go over this with them in October, to give them a chance to have time to digest it and have time to react to it, so we can hopefully get it approved at their first meeting or last meeting in October. That's the goal, or at least the recommendation accepted to be transmitted to the state. Mr. Brown, Mr. Teeple, does that sound viable?
Yes, ma'am.
We're going to all go out and celebrate somewhere, and we can't, because there's this little thing called the sunshine law. We can't talk to each other. And I want to apologize to the board. I overstepped that little boundary with an email I sent out right before our last meeting about the advertisement. And I apologize to the board for doing that. We really can't email each other. And I don't want to set a precedent to make that look like it's okay. It wasn't. And I apologize, and I accept responsibility for that.
Well, I made a mistake too this past week, and I apologize to you guys for that too with my email.
Well, let's let it all be a learning lesson for all of us, and we know what not to do and what to do. If we have something we want to have conveyed to the entire board, we can do 2 things. We can ask to have something made a matter of public record, so it'll be part of the minutes, or we can ask to, we can send something to Nancy or to Mike and ask them to send it out to everyone, which is what I did with the the data on education that you all received sometime today. So we'll make this work. All right. Today, we want to go through the housing element, the conservation element, and the recreation and open space elements. What I would like to do is, we also need to go through housing and conservation too. Briefly, let me just share with you what I did and why I did it on the data. We're not going to go over it sheet by sheet, but I pulled data from the Florida Department of Education website. And this is testing data and this is graduation rate data. And since our major competitor and our major point of comparison by people wanting to move into the county is mainly along our eastern border. And we've had developers come to us and say, we can go across the county line and get a better education. So what I did was I pulled the data for Putnam, St. John's, and the statewide averages for you to look at, for you to see. It's great when we compare ourselves to our previous levels and our previous achievements. But as long as we stand isolated, just like with population and things like that, we are only comparing ourselves to ourselves. And yes, we look good when we do that and we make improvements, and there's no doubt about that. But we also need to look at how things stand, especially in the county that seems to be getting a lot of our population or wants to get it and can get it. I know of 2 families right now that have moved to St. Johns County primarily, solely for the educational systems. So, and that's from South Putnam. So anyhow, just have this data. It's for your eyes only. It's, we might talk about it some when we get to the point of talking about intergovernmental cooperation and recommendations we want to make to the county commission on this. So keep that with you. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them, how I did it. I just did it from FLDOE data. So it's all out there as public record. All right. Anything else for the good of the order before we get started? I'm going to do my best to get us out of here by 6 o'clock. And let's put it this way, we're going to be out of here by 6 o'clock to give us a chance to just kind of change gears and get ready for the meeting at 6:30. You're welcome to be a part of that meeting. I don't think anyone has attended one of those workshops yet. They are enlightening and they are informative. And it's always good to listen to the public and hear what they have to say. If you can't stay for the whole time, if you can't stay for any of it, can't come back in for any of it, we certainly understand that. I look for that meeting to go a good hour and a half at the minimum. But as Mike was quoted in the paper this morning saying, we will stay until the last person has been heard. And that is really what we're going to do, because we can't not listen to the public on this. They have input and they have, this is a good opportunity for them. So let's get started. The first one up, let's look at the housing element. And this has got some good redlining in it and some good changes, a few of them. But we are free to make any changes we see necessary. Does everyone have a copy of the housing element before them?
Yeah.
Okay. Looking at the first page, the only changes are the number of units by 2035. And this is changing the dates for the term of the comp plan will be 2020 to 2035. On page 2, We have inserted, our consultants, thank you, have inserted under policy C118, the county shall provide for higher density maximums in the urban services area. This is not the only area we're providing higher density, is it?
No, I mean, based on the discussions we had at the special meeting a couple weeks ago, we're also looking at increasing the densities, allowable densities in the urban reserve. And most likely, and I'm still working on it, and we'll have that forthcoming in the near future, a change in the density, allowable densities in the rural residential future land use category.
And also agricultural.
Yeah, you're right.
So if we can make that change, that would be good. A lot of what this element talks about is how we will encourage people to do the right thing with property and with housing, and to point them toward funding that's available, and public funding and information about public funding for upgrade to substandard housing. Moving over to page 5, we are striking policy C1.2.7. That date has come and gone. Now we can amend that if we want to. Or do we really want to engage, to mandate that the county do something like a substandard or a housing survey? Thoughts?
I can speak from a staff standpoint because both of these deletions were my recommendation.
Okay.
And they sound good. And if we had the resources and ability to do it, it would probably be a good thing. But these were adopted in 2010 with these dates. I think they were carryover from the previous plan before that.
I think so.
And they just haven't been done because we don't have the wherewithal to do it right now and haven't had it. And I don't anticipate the county will have those resources, at least in the planning section, to complete those.
Well, and I certainly think that this plan should not encumber the future staff or future board. So,
You're looking 15 years out though.
yeah. Do you want to do something, give it a 10-year deadline or something like that, Jerry?
I mean,
But it sounds to me like something that we ought to do. And I understand what Mike's saying, that there are a lot of the things the county's not able to accomplish simply because of funding and staff. But I don't know, this one seems to me like something that we might ought to try to do if we ever have the opportunity to do so.
and one of the things, sort of following up and arguing against my previous statements, I see Brian has a comment he wants to make, but is that if it's an important thing to do and it's in the plan, we can push the board to say, hey, you said you want this done, free up some funding and resources to allow it to get done.
Brian, you had a comment on that?
Well, I mean, Madam Chair, I think the issue here is you can go out and do this. Then what do you do with those data? The folks who are living in substandard housing, those do self-identify themselves, at least in the county's SHIP program, when they apply for either rehab or emergency repairs. If you know at the corner of 3rd and 4th Streets that there's a substandard housing, I think that it begs the question, what is the county going to do with that information?
Okay. Is that information something that would be useful in applying for sponsor funding for remediation?
We know the numbers. We don't have specific locations. So I think in applying for funding, you're looking at numbers, right? Not necessarily locales.
Correct.
The other problem is, depending on what kind of a public database is created out of that, now all of a sudden you've identified your citizens who are living in substandard housing, and perhaps the stigma that might be attached to that.
If it's
Do we know
not
what
done,
adjacent counties are doing? Have they approached this at all?
They'll do it on a case-by-case basis. For example, if you apply for CBDG funding, you oftentimes have to go out and do surveys on income and poverty and those sorts of things by address in order to qualify for those programs. I don't know of any county that does it as a matter of routine, except those large urban counties who have CBDG entitlement monies, where they have a 5-year plan. They have a plan for how they're going to spend those monies over 5 years. The federal government just sends it to them as a matter of routine because of their size. And then some of them do those sorts of things, so they then know where to focus the application of those monies.
It just seems to me like this was something you'd need to have this kind of information when you're writing grants and things like that, or applying for grants. But I don't know if I'm wrong on that. That's fine.
I would think it would be part of a needs analysis for a grants application.
Yeah, that's.
And we do, excuse me.
Go ahead.
We have a consultant that helps us with the county with this for the CDBG funds. And he does, as Brian says, when we go each year apply for those funds, he does a study and identifies and seeks the funding for that. But we don't do anything on a countywide proactive basis. It's done, as Brian indicated, on basically on an as needed basis, at least for the first C127 policy C127.
Correct.
What I was wondering, following up on Jerry's comment and on Brian's, would it be viable to do something by district, by commission district, and or by zip code rather than identifying specific sites? That way we would have something where we could focus. We could say in the 32181 zip code, we have identified this many substandard housing units, and so we would have that. And it wouldn't be specific, it would be aggregated to some sort of jurisdictional area.
You certainly could, Madam Chair. Again, though, if you look at the factors of substandard housing, there are a number of them. There's structural integrity. Some of that is viewable from the public right-of-way, but there are then factors related to incomplete kitchen facilities, right. Not having a source of heat, and those sorts of things, lack of complete plumbing, that can only be determined primarily by an on-site inspection. It's pretty labor intensive. It can be done.
Is it something that could be self-reported?
Sure.
Joey, you had a comment?
I'd leave it out, and when they can write the grants, that's when you got to redo it anyway. It doesn't matter if you already identify it, they have to re-identify it. From why things working with the city of Crescent City, they just come in and the grant writer identifies the area and does his job. So I would say to leave that scratched out like Mike Brown has.
Thank you.
I agree with that.
I agree with that.
Okay.
Because it's going to be site specific anyway.
Right. I was just thinking if we could put something in there generic that says something to the effect of when needed for funding purposes, something could be done. But let's leave it out. Okay, I'll hush. Further down on policy C 1.3.2 talks about the inventory of vacant and undeveloped land. I I think that's a moving target, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, but I will be honest with you, we have received requests in the past for, not real often, but every once in a while, somebody will contact us about, hey, what, they're fishing for land to potentially do a development.
Does the property appraiser maintain any of that information in their database?
The property appraiser's records will show when you do a parcel search, it will oftentimes have vacant or single family residence or something along those lines on them. But with all due respect to your property appraiser and the other 66 property appraisers around the state, those data are oftentimes dated, incomplete, and sometimes incorrect.
Okay. Thoughts on this?
I'll make one comment. I'm not sure if this ties in anywhere, but in the past, I can remember when folks would come in and talked about doing some types of developments or whatever. There have been a lot of citizens that would come forward and say, well, look, we've got a lot of vacant lots that are already developed there, for infill. And I'm wondering if the county's ever done anything to categorize those, because in fact, most of those lots that are available for infill, most of them aren't worth building on. Or they're in neighborhoods where you couldn't possibly get a loan to build a new home in there. So, I mean, does that tie into this in any way?
You'll find later policies that relate to looking at some of your what we call antiquated subdivisions,
right?
That have been busted up, sometimes back in the 20s. And there are techniques, and some of them are described currently within your plan for trying to aggregate those lots. The problem is to do good work in antiquated subdivisions. The government has really got to put forth some money in order to make that happen. If you leave it, and I know we're an entrepreneurial nation, if you leave it to the private sector, those lots will go undeveloped. If you probably take a look at your tax certificate sales every year, a lot of those are those lots, in fact.
Okay.
Can I say something?
Ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Erin.
It's Erin. Yeah. I think the chamber is probably a more accurate place to go for that kind of thing. Developers usually are going to contact the Chamber of Commerce, and they keep a list, I know, of industrial properties and stuff like that. I don't really feel like, I think it's time to leave that struck out personally.
Okay, Mike, are you okay with that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, to the Commissioner's point, when we get to the economic development element, it does talk about the databases that the Chamber will maintain pursuant to the comprehensive plan.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Policy C.1.33, comprehensive inventory of county-owned vacant land. Now, this is maintained, isn't it?
We have one. It's dated. I will tell you the last time it was updated was Brian did it, so it's a couple years old. But we have a rough one, but it has been done in the past.
Should this be something that's done like every 5 years?
To make it useful, it would probably have to be done at least that often.
Thoughts from the
yeah.
Thoughts, folks?
I mean, that seems like an easier thing to keep a running thing on than the other two, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can be pulled out. That can be pulled out of the tax records.
Right.
And it does also fit with an effort that's I believe you're all aware of by the county commission to try to put out for sale some of the properties that they have obtained through various means over time, usually through through the lack of paying of taxes and liens. They're trying to maintain that list and turn around and put those properties back out for sale. So maybe massaging this policy would be something that would easier done than the other two that we've scratched.
How would you feel about every 5 years?
I believe they have a list right now.
They
That's
do
what
have
they,
one now.
yes, because that's when they do their auction, that's what it comes off of.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I've seen the list and I've helped pick out what they're going to try to sell.
Okay.
But we can,
A minimum of every 5 years.
all right.
You might want to just update the list that they're currently using.
Sure, that would be the baseline.
And I don't know where they got it to start from, Mike. Do you?
No, I do not, but I could find out. I think I have some ideas, but I'm not positive. Yeah.
Okay.
Does this have to be in the comprehensive plan as far as the county maintaining something like that? Is there any advantage that to be in the comprehensive, or is that something it's just the county has an advantage to do it itself since you're trying to market it?
Should it be comp plan or strategic plan?
Yeah, I don't think the county offering for sale is necessarily related here. But the theory behind this is if the county has vacant land, if you read the policy in toto, it talks about to make it available for affordable housing. There are three things that go into making a home. It's the land price, it's the materials price, and it's the labor price, right? So this is one way of manipulating to a degree the land cost. And that would go towards affordability. And I think that's why it's related to this policy and related to housing.
Okay. You want to keep it here, or do you want to recommend it go in the strategic plan? Keep it here? Boot it out?
I don't know. Since they're already doing it, I don't see why we need to have it in the comp plan. The county, I mean, your 5 commissioners have taken it upon themselves to reduce the number of lots and or houses, because I know they sell houses too, because it's not just vacant land.
Right. Well, there's a lot of stuff in the comp plan that they're already doing, and we want to encourage that it continue to be done.
Well,
Aaron, you had a comment? Oh, go ahead, Ken.
I don't think you have to worry about encouraging them to do it, because they're wholeheartedly for that. Every one of them.
Aaron, did you have a comment?
No, I didn't.
Okay. All right. Anybody tell me what the pleasure of the board is?
I just don't see any reason for it to be in the comp plan myself, but it doesn't, because I think Ken's right. I think they're going to do it regardless.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Okay, take it out, leave it out. Okay, moving on to page 7 is clear. Anything that you've made notation of in these pages, point that out. Page 8 is just a change in an office title. Page 9 and page 10 and page 11. Anything else in housing that you feel like we need to address and make sure is in the comp plan? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next element, which is the conservation element. This is a fairly lengthy one, so let's dig in and get her done. There's quite a bit in the conservation element that we need to address and look at. Some of it is semantic. Some of it is contextual. So Brian, who's the one who worked through this one, Brian or Mike?
I did the initial work on it.
Would you take us through it, please, sir?
Sure. Again, as you mentioned, Madam Chair, this is a relatively lengthy element, and it's broken down into various kinds of things dealing with conservation. The first changes that you're looking at are generally merely semantics related to air quality, spelling out what NAAQS is, saying that it was related to air quality, and those don't change anything policy-wise within the document. It just makes it clear as to what these things are. Moving on to the next page.
On page 2, on 1.1.3, adding the statement that the county will participate in statewide or regional efforts to reach satisfactory air quality. Are we looking at some of the things that are being done in the metropolitan areas, or what are we looking at here?
I'm sorry, I'm lost. Give me the policy number again, ma'am. I apologize.
1.1.3.
The county shall protect and enhance.
Right. No, participate.
By.
Page 2.
I don't have anything about participating on my document.
Me either.
Okay. Nancy, maybe they don't have, this is what was sent out.
I printed it.
Okay. On page 2.
Says participate.
Says participate, yes.
Yeah, mine says participate.
All right. Does everybody say participate?
Yeah.
No.
No.
Do you have a policy E.1.3.1.1.3?
I do.
Yeah.
Okay. What does it read, Aaron?
Mine just says the county shall protect and enhance air quality by, and then colon, and then it goes A, B, C, D, E, F on the next page.
Okay.
Well, what is it? What do you have right before that?
E1.1.2 county will encourage alternatives such as composting and chipping facilities.
Yeah, they left it out of yours.
Okay, you might have a different version.
I printed out. Okay.
Okay, it's going to, sometimes you don't get all the changes when you pull it up on an iPad.
No, I pulled mine up on my computer.
All right, click on the red bar. Do you have a red bar between 1.1.2 and 1.1.4 to the left?
There is a red bar, but
click on the red bar.
Right, I'm just saying, my printed version is what I'm looking at. There's nothing there, so let me pull it back up.
Okay, different versions of Microsoft Word and different devices will project this differently.
Yeah, I didn't think of that.
Let me read this to you as it is in the document some of us have. The county will participate in any statewide or regional efforts to reach satisfactory air quality at a condition equal to or better than federal and state air quality standards. Brian, what is that addressing?
That is addressing, should some of your metropolitan areas go into violating air quality standards, there is an overall responsibility region-wide for all local governments to do at least their fair share in bringing them back into ambient air quality standards. I will tell you this, and frankly, you can probably take it out. A number of years ago, the Environmental Protection Agency changed, number one, the model in which they use to forecast air quality, and two, moved monitoring stations around. I think it'll be a very long time before the Jacksonville metropolitan area, of which you're not a part, and I understand that, goes into non-attainment. I don't have particularly a problem with taking it out. It's a nice thing to say, but it probably is not necessarily operational in the future for at least a very long time.
Having lived in Atlanta for 10 years, I ran into this with air quality standards in the summer months. Between the months of May and September, state agencies were required to reduce their single occupancy vehicle travel. And we had to do it either through work from home or carpooling or bicycling or walking to work. Is that kind of what the gist of this is? Yeah,
that's one of the things. And, you look at your commuting patterns, the counties which are adjacent to and surround Duval County, for example, do send 60% plus of their labor force into Duval County to work.
Right.
Putnam does not. Putnam has a few go there. You've got some go to Clay. You got some go St. John's. Some to Marion. I mean, you kind of spread them around. There is not a very strong commuting pattern generally coming out of Putnam County. It doesn't mean that people don't live there and work someplace else, because a number of them do, but certainly not in the numbers and not to the single location.
Okay, so it's not doing us any harm to keep it in there, is it?
No, ma'am. And I apologize, it's not in my copy either. So hopefully as we go through this,
I'll point it out. Okay, it's the foibles of Microsoft Word. We'll blame it on that. Somebody published a book one time called Microsoft Word Annoyances, so I think this fits in that category. Anybody have an objection to keeping this in? All righty, moving on. The bottom of page 3. Basically, it's similar, but a little bit more specific. The county will continue to implement policies related to air quality and tobacco, such as smoke-free, tobacco-free workplace. I think we pretty much have to do that now, don't we?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Nothing on page 4 unless anyone has anything. Page 5. Does everyone's copy have a large strikeout area?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Anyone have heartburn with striking that area out?
Just remember, this was a duplicative policy from our future land use element, and really
Right.
we discussed it's more appropriate to be in the land development code,
Right.
and it is in the land development code, and so it's probably doesn't need to be here. I mean, we've got it already. We're not losing it because it's in the land development code already.
Okay, and do we need to reference the land development code in that policy?
We could.
Let's reference the LDC in there. Okay. Moving on to the next page, we only have a change in water management or water management districts to include both St. John's and Swanee River. Any questions about that, and to eliminate the F before DEP? Page 7, policy 1.2.10. We have 2 additions. The county shall continue to recommend to the St. John's Water Management District and the St. Swanee River Water Management District that bodies having water quality problems be included in the Surface Water Improvement Management Program, the SWIM program. Anybody have a problem with that?
How does that relate to the recently passed item that Bobby Payne got through?
The water quality. Water Quality Act.
Yeah.
I don't personally know, but I will certainly research it to see how it relates.
Yeah, I know the SWIM program came in about 1988 or somewhere in there, because I was at the district at that point. But I know there's a new thing that just came out. This just got signed by the governor a couple weeks ago, which it might be worth looking at that in relation to this.
It was the Water Quality Act, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Bobby Payne, Representative Payne did. Okay. Anything else on page 7? Moving on to page 8, we only have some codification changes. On page 9, we have a space put in where there was none. Page 10, again, codification and just giving the acronym for the Department of Agricultural and Consumer Services. And page 11, we're just getting the numerology right all the way through the bottom of page 13. We're striking out the majority of page 14. Brian, would you explain that, please? Why we're doing it?
I'll take it for Brian.
Okay.
I mean, it's the same discussion we had with the previous.
It goes to the LEC.
It's better suited for the land development code. And we've got it in the exact same wording in the land development code.
Okay.
You're on 14, you're on page 14, because I don't see anything struck out on mine.
Okay, well,
it's 16 on ours, Joel.
Yeah, Commissioner will be thinking.
Okay.
How'd you get, what do you have that we don't?
Well, I tell you, that's
We're
2
just moving
pages
through.
away.
On page 15, we are looking at just Army Corps of Engineers, just making that acronym correction. Page 16, we're moving through. Page 17, we have the Army Corps of Engineers correction one more time. Page 18, we have just inserted the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services Division of Forestry and the DEP. It's just been inserted in policy E 1.3.5, so that's just mainly a semantic change. All right, in page 19, Lord, don't get me to, it's policy E.1.3.6. Item A is just an addition of the State Bureau of Mines. Item C, again, is just defining the state agencies. Item D is getting the codification right. Y'all with me?
Yeah.
Move on to page 21. In policy E.1.3.10, we've got the St. John's Water Management District. Do we need to put the Swanee River Water Management District in there as well? Mike is shaking his head yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we'll add that one in. Page 22 is merely defining an acronym. Page 23 is clean. Page 24, policy E.1.4.7. The county shall post informational signage regarding the protection of manatees at county-owned and maintained public boat ramps. Okay. And then down policy E.1.4.10 has been struck. Somebody else struck this one because it's in a different color. The county shall advocate the purchase of uplands, whether by water management district, local land buying programs, or other means needed to protect groundwater resources.
Madam Chair, that was really just being moved. That policy was moved to what I have as page 8 to E.1.2.15. So the policy stays there. It was just moved to a location,
okay,
to an objective that probably fits better.
Gotcha. Any questions? Page 25 is just some capitalization and some acronym correction. Coming down to policy E.1.6.1. Let everybody have a chance to find it. This is addition. You may or may not have it. It's on page 26 of what I have. Okay. This is adding, just correcting the grammar there. such as solar, wind power, biomass, biodiesel, energy storage technology, microgrids, community battery storage of electric power, and solar car charging stations. That's speaking, of course, to renewable energy. And E.1.6.2 is also renewable energy, talking about solar systems for buildings and encouraging that. Anybody want to work through this? Mike or Brian, anything you want to point out?
Well, I mean, I think you're spot on, Madam Chairman. I mean, this is really looking at having policies to promote renewables. The world has literally changed since 2010. And
just
so
a little bit.
Yeah. So we're seeing a lot more of this. I think this is kind of appropriate to keep up with what is currently going on, not only in Putnam County, but throughout the nation.
Okay. And we'll have specific guidelines in the LDC that will, as we do that.
Yes.
On how to do this. Okay. All right. And we say we're going to provide incentives. What kind of incentives can we provide? $1.6.5. Incentives for.
Yeah, I'm finding it.
Yeah. So the bottom of my page 26.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I've got to think about that for a minute. There are incentives sometimes by the power provider, and there are tax kind of incentives. I'm not sure what the county can do unless it would be some kind of change to your LDC that makes it easier to do this through the LDC, through whether it's changing maximum building heights, for example, to allow for the solar panels to be on them, or other sorts of policy kinds of incentives and standard sorts of incentives. I don't believe that this was necessarily a monetary incentive consideration here.
Okay.
It could be a tax incentive. If somebody did that, they wouldn't be charged taxes on what it costs to do the solar portions, but they would be taxed on the building, but not taxed on the whatever those improvements were.
Right, but this policy specifically refers to the land development code, so it would be more what you can, how you can do things. Yep.
Can we think of a better word than incentive?
It's rolling through my mind.
Okay. Moving on to our page 27, probably your page 29, mainly just semantic or acronym correction. And then E.1.7.4, we have an addition here that the county shall promote the use of cooler roof systems with reflective coating materials. Building people, what do you say?
I think that's already promoted in the building code, actually.
Okay.
You certainly wouldn't want to make it where that you have to put a cool roof on if we're trying to promote growth at all. So I don't
We can promote but not require?
Yeah, you can promote it. I mean, I guess it could be promoted, but promote but not require. Yeah.
Jerry, what are your thoughts?
Well, it seems to me like this would promote the saving of energy, and I'm trying to think of how to say it. Lessen the need for the amount of air conditioning and things like that, which would be in the building code, which is what Bill already mentioned. So.
Okay.
There are, like California, for instance, you can't put a roof on anything unless it has a certain cool roof rating. And I would say we would not want to do that. It just drives the cost of construction up, in a rural setting. Maybe if you're in an inner city and you've got a big city type thing, it might be something that be useful because it actually cools down the environment as well.
Okay. Okay. Guys, you're doing a good job. It's only 5:02 and we finished conservation. Wonderful.
It's because we was lost half the time.
Well, there's something to be said for that. You know, obfuscation is our friend. I trust that everyone will, you know, take the time sometime and go back through these. And if you see something that's just a big sore thumb, get to Mike, let him know, because we've got to rely on our experts here. I mean, we've got some really good across the board people that know what they're doing with this stuff, and I appreciate you every day more and more. We're looking at now the recreation and open space element. I think one of the things that you all had extra pages for was you probably had the thumbnails of little pictures of booklets and things like that in that conservation section.
No.
We've taken on, we didn't have that? Okay. That coming up, can we do a bibliography of state and federal documents that can be referred to? Anything that we have referred to by title in the plan, can we just put in a bibliography at the end?
Ma'am.
Okay. Recreation and open spaces. Does everybody have that?
Mm-hmm.
It is section FF. And we really don't have much to do here other than what you all feel like we should do. Page 1, any questions on that?
I did speak with with Kevin, the director of the county recreation department, and he in policy F111, and I apologize I didn't get into any of the changes, but the meeting I had with him was fairly recently, just for a general discussion. And he was comfortable with the first part, but the last sentence of policy F.111, he doesn't feel comfortable with the recreation department being responsible for determining really the property values for the needed improvement. So he had suggested that we maybe delete that last sentence in that policy.
Aaron, do you have a question?
I did not have a question now.
Okay.
Normally, I mean, I've worked with the Parks and Rec people over the years when people were doing subdivisions and they came to local real estate people to get values for those type of things. But, yeah.
That would be more the developer that would do that rather than the Parks and Rec department.
Well, actually, no, I've worked with Kevin through the Parks and Rec on that several times, but it is kind of hard to determine what the value of access is.
Other thoughts? Anybody opposed to removing that sentence? That sentence is staying in.
Not opposed to it.
Okay. Moving on to FF2, page 2. Anything on that, Mike? I'll let you take us through this one.
No. I mean, he indicated that they are still working together or does work with the school board on coordination or the school district on coordination with recreational facilities.
Is that even done anymore? Aren't they all locked up at closing?
Yeah, but they still try to coordinate when there's on joint things in use, especially
Okay.
when they're co-located or close by. They still work together.
Okay.
I would like to talk about this boat ramp situation that we have in Putnam County because it's pretty sad.
Which
We
one are
have
you,
some-
where are you, what are you looking at, Joel? Tell us the,
FF.1.1.2
okay.
talks about the availability of spaces, and it said including boat ramps.
Right.
And in our county, we have some decent boat ramps, but the parking is pathetic. I mean, in some of the boat ramps, there's no parking. You just have to park on the side of the road. So we certainly don't want to. There should be something in this that doesn't allow that. If you have a boat ramp, you need to have ample parking. And I think the county needs to work toward have ample parking for the boat ramps that they have.
Do we have to grandfather in existing facilities?
Well, again, this says that the county will establish a strategy to correct.
So I think this policy addresses what
Right.
Mr. Danzler was saying needs to be done. Now, the problem is the county hasn't, at least the powers that be, and I may get myself in trouble, haven't really done this. But this says that the county will develop a strategy to deal with that issue, but they haven't followed through yet.
Would that be, because this is something we can put in for any future developed boat ramps must have adequate parking?
That's the way I think needs to happen. Any
Okay.
future boat ramps have to have it and try to get the other ones up to par.
Brian and Mike, can you all work that in?
Yeah.
It shall be done.
Tom, did you have a question?
I think it's covered down here on policy F1-1-6. The county will ensure-
You need to unmute you, Tom.
Oh, I got it here.
Okay. On F11.6, it's covered where the county shall ensure public access, including parking to all boat ramps, canoe launches, docks, walkways, etc.
You're right, it is.
Yeah, it is.
States are supposed to acquire that land to make it acceptable for people.
Right. But again, are we addressing future development or just the existing ones? And 1.1.2 is correct existing deficiencies.
Right. So that addresses the existing. The policy 116, I think, addresses future.
Future.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Do we want to make 1.1.6 be stronger? We say will ensure provision of facilities such as parking, boat ramps.
Is the word shall more a more powerful word than
I
will?
think
I don't know.
so. And it's parallel to what's up in other sections.
If you, and Kevin will probably shoot me for
Tom,
this,
we need
but
to mute you. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Kevin probably will not be happy with this suggestion, but if you want to make it stronger, you put a date in on which to count. I mean, it will tend to say, hey, we want to do this within this time frame. At least the study part.
You're looking at 1.1.2, right?
Yes.
Let's put it by the termination of this plan at 2035.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's going on a regular basis anyway. I'm on a boat ramp committee now,
Okay.
and it's all about money. You know, we have, and we actually there's a pretty good fund, but they're trying to do there is plans for a boat ramp down in Georgetown, which is needed, and I think it's going to be done up to par. But the other boat ramps, it's just really hard to get a grip on. And
Well, it's hard to purchase the land.
well, there is one at Pico that there is some property available, and we've made the suggestions, but whether the county commission will do that or not, we'll see.
I know Drayton Island and a couple of those down in South Putnam, they're landlocked.
Yeah, exactly. That most of them are landlocked. Yeah.
So, but I think if you, like in Georgetown, if they develop that county park down there and develop a good parking area.
We have that park there, which was supposed to be for a new boat ramp.
Right.
As well as adequate parking in the clubhouse.
I think they're going to be doing that.
Yeah, they put a soccer field in and they put a kiddie play lot in there, but nothing with the boating and the parking.
I think again, we're looking at dollars, aren't we? Okay. Moving on, discussion on F.3, F-3, page 3. Coordinating with other agencies and with other public and private organizations for recreational availability.
Where are you, Susan?
I'm on page 3, objective F1.2.
Okay, I'm with you.
Okay. Any questions, concerns, or anything on that page?
I don't know if this is the place that it would be. Is that I know in other areas that if you make a development, if somebody comes in and develops a tract of land, they have to put so much for recreation aside for that. Is that what this is about? Is this, Brian?
Well, that would be, we'll get to later on in this very document, the kinds of levels of service, a service standard that the county has adopted. And really, you should be looking at that each and every time somebody comes in to make sure that there's currently sufficient amount of park facilities, park and recreation facilities to accommodate that. And then if there's not, they should either provide them on site to the extent that they can. In certain cases, they certainly can't, or do a proportionate share contribution. One of the difficulties in maintaining your levels of service is I believe the county still has a moratorium on your impact fees.
Right.
Yep. That is true. And when we get there, I don't mean to jump ahead, but it's sort of tied to this, is when you look at our level of service for recreation, the level of service, the only level of service we have for recreation is 1 acre per 500 persons. That's all it is. I mean, we have a list of facilities per and a reference to persons, but if you read the policy, and it's policy F132, those are only guidelines. And
Right.
That was a conscious decision by the Board of County Commissioners in the past to not have to be forced to spend money that they don't have for recreation. I mean, I don't know how else to put it, but.
And that's also why you'll find the word guidelines bolded. I didn't bold that.
Yeah, no, that was from the original, that's from the existing.
And I think we can have goals, and I think this speaks to quality of life. Does anybody else have thoughts on that?
I believe that we need to look at what other counties are doing, because I think we are falling behind in that. And we should, to make a community attractive, you have to have recreational areas that's nearby. You don't have to, drive 30 miles to go get to them.
Right. If somebody can point me to where I would find that, I'll be glad to do the research.
Madam Chair, I'll bring that back to the next meeting. I know where to find these in the various comprehensive plans. It'd be quicker for me to do it, and so then you can make a comparison. I'm happy to do that.
That would be good. I'm concerned about the level of service recommendations and guidelines because it excludes a lot of people, particularly community centers and swimming pools. 1 per 50,000 people means you're going to have one in the county. Well, if that's located in Palatka, people out in Melrose have to drive 30 miles and people in Crescent City have to drive 25 miles. Is that really what we want?
Putnam County has community centers, though. I mean, didn't like Georgetown has a community center, Boston has a community center, Interlochen has a community center, so.
They're available to use, yes, and Lake Como has one. They are available to use. You can, citizens can use those, groups can use them. I don't think we have anything that would provide a venue for too much of an activity. The schools have some of those.
But if a developer came in to develop a large tract of land, that's something that sometimes it's a private, sometimes the developer pays for all of it, or it's a CDC or it's a partnership with the county. The county pays for some of it, puts up some of the money, and then the developer puts up some of the money to do that. And that's what should be promoted.
Public-private partnerships.
Yeah.
Can you work that into the wording and the guidelines in that 1.3.2?
We'll take a stab at it.
Okay. Of course, swimming pools are expensive to build and more expensive to maintain.
Yeah.
Okay, we've done a really good job with our bike trails and got some hiking trails. Football, soccer fields are primarily private or school, but also, do we want to, Joel, you're talking about boat ramps. Do we want to put anything in the plan about parking, the number of parking spaces we're looking at?
There should be some criteria that if you're going to put a boat ramp in, that you need to have a certain amount of spaces, but I have no clue what determines that. You know, if you put one out in an area that hardly has anybody on it, you know, you would certainly need less than what you do if you're in downtown Palatka, which, you know, downtown Palatka has. I mean, that seems like they did a pretty good job. Whatever formula they used there seemed to work pretty good. I know Crescent City has a pretty nice one too.
They've got two, yeah. Well, the county has the one and the city has a real nice one.
Yeah, the city has a really nice one, and it's got a fair amount of parking.
Yeah, and it's got 2 lanes and it's got parking that's adequate for a boat and trailer. And the county ramp there also has fair parking.
Yeah, it's got fair parking.
But that dock is used a lot for fishing.
Yeah.
So, all right. Are there any standards for parking at a boat ramp, Brian?
I do not know the answer to that question, but I can certainly find out. Probably the Florida Game and Freshwater Fish Commission might have those. We can certainly find out if there are standards, parking standards for boat ramps.
Okay, thank you.
I've never run across that before.
You know, I don't know how you would look at it either, but I think we also need to consider the fact that the population at some point is going to continue to grow. And even though we may get some additional boat ramps, you're still going to have probably a lot more people going to the boat ramps we have. So I don't know if we could put something in there requiring the county to perhaps, you know, look for additional lands close by or whatever that could be used for future parking. It'll be tough to do later on.
You know, that's what this is all about, is the stuff to do later on. So,
Madam Chair,
yes, sir.
If I could, this is a little bit off point, but it speaks to the issue. I haven't looked at the data in a few years, but a few years back, Putnam County had the highest boat registration per capita of any county in the state of Florida.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. I know frequently we will pick up takeout.
No wonder we can't park at any of the boat ramps.
That's right.
That's right, because I'm sitting there eating my lunch.
We've got a beautiful river to play with.
Showcase. We've got a beautiful river to showcase,
And we need to capitalize on that. And to capitalize on it, if you would put nice boat ramps in, but there again, I think maybe it's something that I don't know if there again. If the developer comes in, he pays into a fund to improve the boat ramps. That might be another avenue, but there needs to be something because the river is the asset. I mean, that is the asset that Putnam County has.
right. And it's not only rivers. We've got some lakes that have got good boat access as well.
Nice lakes. Very nice.
And, it may be something that if someone is building on a lot that is riverfront, lakefront, in an area that there is a boat ramp, that they should pay in, there should be I guess that's an impact fee, but.
Well, if you're living on the river, you don't need a boat ramp.
Well, true, if you've got a dock and a lift and everything else. That's true. Okay. Maybe it should go with boat registration.
Maybe so. Well, that's actually where the fishing fund comes from, is they get a small piece of the boat, the registration money.
That's right.
Well, Brian, if you could get us that number of boats registered, that'd be good.
I can look that up again. It's a fun fact.
Yeah. I think that is. And per capita, I imagine we're pretty high. Okay. Anything else with the guidelines and per capita guidance? And of course, we do interlocal agreement. This is part of the interlocal agreement element as well. Things that we need to work together with everyone. And we do we have public space open lands on the future land use map?
No,
Yeah.
not as a category.
No, that's right. I'm sorry. I'm looking at it up here.
Do we need to take out F.1.3.5?
Well, it's not a category, but we could include, and I believe I think we do have a map in the whole series. We have like 14 maps actually in the future land use, or in the comp plan, future land use element, future land use series. And that is one of the maps we do have. And we were, from a staff standpoint, we were just intending on updating that map and including it as information.
Should all of those areas be listed as public facilities?
Well, it's a map and they're identified, but they're not necessarily on a future land use category.
Right, there's not a separate category.
Right.
So we probably need to massage F.1.3.5, don't we? Says it's identified.
Staff will take a look at that. Staff will take a look at that.
All right. Waterways, including the St. Johns River and its tributaries, 1.3.6. Because you'd want Dunn's Creek and all the little creeks that go off of it, like what's the one north of town? My mind blew me for a minute. But yeah, we need to put in its tributaries.
Would you want to put lakes included in that? Are lakes all owned by property owners, not by the county?
County doesn't own the river, the state does.
Or county inventory as a recreational site.
Public and private recreational sites. I would think it would be waterways and lakes. Wouldn't it?
Okay.
Got it.
And don't ask me to define what a lake has to be size-wise to be defined as part of that, but y'all figure that out.
There should be a definition though.
I think there should be,
Yeah.
you know, what constitutes a lake.
20 acres or something.
Yeah. At high water level.
Well, that's another.
All of our West Putnam lakes seem to fluctuate badly. Okay.
You know, and just in addition, if you look at policy F142, it sort of gets at what we were discussing earlier.
Right.
And, Joel brought up about it does provide the opportunity for the Board of County Commissioners to seek a fair share when they deem it appropriate for recreational facilities.
Mm-hmm.
And that covers it right there, actually.
Sure does. All right, moving on to page 8. I have a lot of blue strikeout on my page.
So do I.
Anybody have any problem with that being taken out? Talking about
What
a
was
master
the
plan.
what was the reasoning behind it being stricken?
I mean, the county, again, this came from my discussion with Kevin, with the director of Parks and Recreation. They've got a Parks and Recreation Master Plan from 2007. That's what they're using. He has nothing in his plans. He indicated to update that anytime in the near future. So that was the premise behind deleting that objective.
I have a problem with taking it out because that's a major department of the county, and that's a pretty standard item, isn't it, Ryan? A Parks and Recreation Master Plan?
Rural communities, many of them are just getting them for the first time. So Putnam County actually was somewhat ahead of its time in doing one of these, but it's becoming a much more normal sort of thing, just like your departments have plans, and this is your recreation department plan for what it plans on doing.
This is another one of those that I would say should be reviewed and evaluated for change at least every 5 years.
I think it's from Kevin's standpoint. I think he doesn't have the staff or the resources to do this, is what I'm thinking, and he just.
Okay, but if we put it in the comprehensive plan, this gives him a little bit of support going forward to ask for funding for staff to help maintain that. Because a lot of the things we're putting in the comp plan, yes, we don't have money to do. There are a lot of things that we're doing right now in planning and development we don't have money to do. But it gives us the support from an adopted point standpoint.
Go. Yeah, go.
Doesn't? Or do it? I think this would give him more support if he had a plan.
I agree with that statement.
I do too, Susan. I think it'd be a good idea to have a plan that at least puts some kind of targets out there. And if you end up not being able to accomplish it, so be it. But at least you've got the thing there to work from.
Yeah, you got a target.
Okay.
And I don't see how we can do a lot of development in Parks and Rec if we don't have a plan.
Yeah.
And if we don't know what we have.
He does. He's still working off the 207 plan. I mean,
well, that's
it may be
13 years
dated, but he's still working off that plan. So there is a plan in place. It's just not updated.
It needs to be updated and then reviewed and maintained.
So really what we need to do is just work on that 2015 date and the objective.
I would say take that 2015 date out and say at least every 5 years, or the county will have a Parks and Recreation master plan, a working plan, yeah, that will be reviewed and upgraded a minimum of every 5 years. And then leave the rest of it in.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Because you've got to have that. I mean,
Yeah, you got to have something.
yeah, I know it's nice to take it out, and I know from the standpoint of a staffing situation, I know it's hard when you've got a mandate, but I also know that if it's tied to something, if you got to have that to apply for grants. You're going to have to show your master plan. If it's 13 years old, you know, a funder is going to look at that and go, they don't really want this. They don't care enough to update their plan. So
That's true. He's working off of 2007. He's way behind.
yeah, the times they have changed.
Well, and hopefully things will change faster in the future than they have over the last 15 years. So
Right.
you got to have something there in place.
We now have a splash pad out at Triangle Park. Whoever have heard of a splash pad in 2007? Unless you lived in Atlanta and knew the one at Olympic Park. Now, section F.162 about a citizen survey every 5 years to assess the use of existing facilities. That can be maintained just through data of usage data, can it?
I don't know if the county collects usage data or not.
How would that be collected? I'm just curious.
Probably somebody standing there with a clipboard and asking people coming in.
Periodically, right? I know the state does that at their parks.
But I would think there would be some sort of counters or something like that we know how many people use certain facilities.
Guess I could do it at the Blueberry Festival.
Absolutely. You have a lot of people come to the Blueberry Festival.
Yeah, a lot of people on that one. They're not all from the county, but that would be a good place to conduct a survey.
Well, also Catfish Festival.
If
you don't keep tabs of the use, you're not going to have any justification for upkeeping a facility.
Upkeeping or building something new because you need more.
Yeah.
So I think that's not really something we can put in the comp plan, but I think that's something that should be maintained, some kind of usage data.
That really probably should be part of your Parks and Rec master plan.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But we don't need to define what that is because that's not our job. I like it when that's not our job. Okay, folks, that is it unless anybody has anything else. We will meet virtually on July 22nd. I don't know about you all, but I find it kind of easier to do it virtually than doing it in person. Comments, questions?
I hate virtual.
You hate virtual?
Yeah, I like virtual. We'll fight that one out, Joel.
Full time or what? I don't know.
Listen, I appreciate so much what you're doing. I was handed a pretty heavy mandate from the chairman of the county commission. I want this done by October 1st. And then we had this little virus, rear its ugly head. And, but you all have come back together. You've come back together with a great deal of passion, a great deal of support for what we are doing. And it's obvious that you're totally invested in the future of Putnam County. And I totally appreciate you for that. And that being said, it is 5:36. I will adjourn this meeting, and anybody who wishes to come back and join us at 6:30, please feel welcome. George, once again, thank you for being here. It's always good to have legal support standing by if we need it. You're welcome to attend the meeting at 6:30, but this is purely informational. We've not run into anything legal at the two previous ones, so we should be okay.
Okay.
But I thank you very much for being here.
And if anybody has any questions or concerns about the public records law or sunshine law, feel free to contact me. You've addressed the other, so I wouldn't even bother with that, but I just want us all to be careful of that.
Go ahead and tell us where you're headed with that, with the Public Records Act.
Well, primarily, I'm referring to Sunshine Law. Because of the type of organization we are and the mandate we have, everything has to be publicly noticed, and any discussions about any subject that could come up before this board have to be done in a public setting. Otherwise, we're violating the Sunshine Law. I think we've been good on the notices, especially when we've had to reschedule and do so under Zoom. I appreciate that very much. And I know because of the virtual nature, often you're more tempted to have discussions behind the scenes because you want to get the work done and talk about it, but we just can't do that based on the law. So if there's any question or concerns whatsoever about what you can or can't do, please reach out to me. I'm happy to help you out.
Thank you, George. I appreciate that. And I think we know that we can't go out and have a drink together after the meeting.
we can have a drink, we just can't talk business, right?
Can't talk. We don't want to be seen together in public. Let's put it that way.
The perception right now until it's all over might not be too good.
Yeah, perception is reality. So especially in government service. So, but we're getting there.
But if you're going to have a drink, let me go so I can monitor everything. Okay?
There you go.
And we have to buy, right? The meeting's already adjourned, Nancy. But anyhow, thank you very much. And good luck with you, Ken, tomorrow. I know you're having surgery. Good luck. And we hope to see you back in 2 weeks.
Cool.
And I'm looking down because he's on the bottom of my monitor. And I appreciate IT. Jacob, you've been wonderful through this. I've got this wonderful 24, 28-inch curved monitor sitting in front of me. So it's great to have. And Tom and I come in and do our stuff here. My dachshund would be too rowdy for me to do it at home. But it's good to have staff available too. So thank you. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Mike. I'll see you two at 6:30. Yeah. And good meeting, folks. See you in 2 weeks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.